Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Discography. This is the very beginning of a new long-form format called a very special episode. And we are going to kick things off. We are actually very thrilled and honored, actually, to kick things off with Kevin Whelan, one of the two songwriting geniuses behind New Jersey's The Wrens, and now his new outfit, Aeon Station. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, how are you both? Thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for being here.
Oh my God, thank you. Congrats, first of all, on No More Constipation, my friend.
Yes, congrats on getting the record out and and the warm reception it's got. That must be very satisfying.
So we have to know. Okay, so you chose Peter Gabriel as your artist of choice to tackle on Discography. Was part of the appeal the empathy you may have felt toward him based on the endless amount of time he took in between records?
I yes, and that's why I gave a couple ideas, and he's certainly one of them. You're hitting it right on the head. I think he's an artist of incredible proportion, and yes, there is something about kind of taking a while to do things. That's for sure.
But you start off as a kid in Jersey. You like him for particular reasons. Then you as time is going on, and you are listening to maybe some of the later stuff, you're looking at it through very different lenses based on your professional partnership.
Yeah, it's it's so intimate, right? I think the one thing I have to kind of make clear, which is sort of not shared enough, is the Wrens have always been four people, mm-hmm. right? It's really that kind of mix of the four, regardless of what their roles are, their positions that they play in the group, right? Each one has been so instrumental in that incredible, over 30-year kind of experience. But yeah, absolutely. I have the greatest empathy for all kinds of aspects to it because I've lived it, right? Artists that struggle to finish, artists that struggle to start, artists that struggle to not reach what they thought they were going to get, and it's a life lesson when you go through it.
There's really a thing about certain combinations of people. It's like when you talk about it being really four people that make that sound. There are really some bands that really are like that, where you really need. You remove one of the things, it takes on such a different character.
No, I think it's exactly right. And not only that is, our friendship was born out of, the music, and, it's not often, the Beatles, right. The Beatles were up and down within 6-7 years, but we lived together as a band for 15 years.
Yeah. Right? I always picture you guys living in one of those houses like they had in the movie Help, where they all walk into.
Yeah, it was definitely like the Monkees and all that kind of stuff. And, it was sort of in vogue at the time of, I think, the early 90s, where bands could not get onto a major label and they couldn't afford a studio. So they really sort of went to their home kind of, I think it really was the kind of almost like a trend at the time.
Right.
But we really lived into it pretty heavy.
Yeah. What was the story with the record label that you guys were on? That was the label they had Creed and Evanescence and all that, right?
Yeah. I mean, the story, exactly. Finger 11, it's so that was a super unique story. Again, it was Jerry McDonald, who plays the drums, and myself. I mean, we were kind of always kind of driving where the record label stuff kind of goes, right? I recall Jerry and I were really sort of admins, right? At our first jobs out of college, we got our jobs out of the back of the New York Times, and we were in the same office. We sat next to each other, we lived with each other, walked on the bus together. He's a true brother. And I remember we got our first record contract sent to us via a fax machine, and then we had this guy who said, "Hi, I'm going to buy the label," and his name was Alan Meltzer, and he said for us to come meet him. And it was really like a movie. We went to this weird building in New York City. He rented out a whole floor. He was in a massive conference room with one of these 30-foot tables. And he was this guy sitting at the end of it. And Jerry and I are looking at each other like, what the hell is this? And he's like, I'm going to make you guys, rich and famous. And we were like, really? Can we get some bus fare home? That's all we really want.
The part that's fascinating to me is I know they wanted you to change your sound, but I'm trying to picture what they have in mind.
What was the eventual, what were they hoping for?
I think they were hoping for, like we were talking about with Peter Gabriel, they were really hoping for hits, whatever that meant.
But
They brought in.
Did they give you specific notes? Like if you could sound like this mixed with this?
Like they want you to sound like Weezer or something? Or like, did they give you anything?
Yeah, I think they wanted us to sound crunchier and poppier in this. And at the time we were making Secaucus.
Right.
And
Great record, man.
Oh, thank you so much. I do love it as well. And they came to our house. I mean, and we were in the basement, and it was like a wood shop that some guy made in his house. I mean, there was that's where we made the record. And they came with their A&R guy, who was some dude that was always on cocaine and just like completely insane. And he was like, "These are 2 hits." And we're like, "A hit? Are you sure?" So we picked like, Rest Your Head and Surprise Honeycomb. And they put us into a studio to re-record those songs, and they are so bad. It was like they're like rancid versions you want to vomit. But they were hoping to make hits out of those songs, in particular or others, and they were never going to get it. That's for sure.
Right.
But anyway, so they offered us, and it's sort of like an interesting story, but it really was,
I could tell how nice you were going to be because you had actually talked in some other piece about taking advantage of this poor A&R guy who offered to buy you food.
Well, they gave you an advance or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, we needed rent, and that's the only thing I kind of look back on that was kind of shitty, right? And he gave us 10 grand to kind of live because we had nothing, and we sort of said we'll sign, and then, but at the end of the day, all stories are written, and we just couldn't bear, and it came to like loggerheads. I didn't go into it, but there was like this cantankerous meeting where, I'm going to sign the next band, and he did.
So when you were making the Meadowlands, that's basically what you ended up making, right? After that record deal ended.
It's weird is it is, but that really is 6-7 years later, and that's like a journey through hell. Like it was a lost period.
Right. So what was the status of the band in those years? Were you starting to put that material together, or were you kind of like maybe not playing so much? Was it?
That's sort of where we were together all the time, recording nonstop, and that's when Interscope came sniffing because we were friends with Dismemberment Plan, and they sort of connected us in those kind of bands. And
in retrospect, that was actually kind of a weird golden age for the record business, for the music business. Yeah, because bands like that could get signed and get actually some money to do things. Like it didn't seem like it at the time. It seemed shitty at the time, but in retrospect, it was actually kind of a golden age. Really.
We were never part of a scene, which kind of made it even more complicated. You had all those bands like Jawbreaker, you had all the DC bands, and Dismemberment Plan were a DC band, and they would befriend us, but we would go down there. We were just still, I don't know, we weren't quirky enough to be quirky, and we weren't like cool enough to be cool. It was just it was a weird fit.
Everyone I knew at the time was batshit crazy over the Meadowlands. Everyone I knew became such a sensation in my little world and everyone's little world that I knew.
I think I probably maybe Rick heard it first. So we have one of our friends who's kind of works in the pod with us. He does our Twitter. Turns us on to a lot of music, and I think Rick was the early adopter.
Yeah. But I'm just curious if you think possibly the devoted following of the Meadowlands raised the stakes too high and gave Charles some Kevin Shields-itis, that he didn't feel like he could jump over that particular hurdle he created for himself.
I think it would be impossible to not think that there's some credence in that. Of course. I think if, all artists, I think, look upon what work they've done, and that really was a real high watermark, or just really well received to a degree that we were not even ready for.
Yeah, and not just really like well received by press, but how people personally related to it. So I would imagine.
That emotional resonance, because you have all these people who are, stuck in their jobs. And now or
even not, I think just getting older and moving on through life, doors close to you no matter what you're doing,
It is. It's about that. And it was also that we were all sort of progressing our adolescence, right? And we all were in kind of weird relationships, and we couldn't manage those. And it was a lot of boys trying to be men, like in their 30s, and you're just like, wow, this is starting to look strange. And we kind of put that into the songs, right? And that I think also kind of resonated with like not having jobs, not being able to be figured out with the relationship stuff. Where am I going to go? And oh my God, now I'm in my 30s. and holy crap, I'm not like my
It's almost
father,
like
my
existential terror. I mean, there really is that vibe.
Yeah, yeah. For us, it was for sure. It was certainly real.
And so, as that time is slipping by, I mean, all that time is pretty well documented as far as what went down. But then when it really turned into a well of silence, is there any part of you that's connecting with what's going on as far as shaping things till they're absolutely perfect and trying to go after the unattainable, or are you thinking, what are we doing a long time ago?
Yeah, I think what were we doing a long time ago, right? I think also, as everyone has to figure it out, there was never money, and there was no really massive, kind of career, and we never really, really bit the bullet like a lot of our friends, like the Hold Steady, where they're like, we're just going to tour and rock it out. We were always, too nervous about the songs and all that kind of stuff, and then wives and kids came into the picture, right? And so that's a really big change that we all had at that period. And I think, like I was saying, it's all four members of the band, but there was really something about living with each other. You remove a couple elements, and people don't realize how important those elements were until they're gone.
Right.
For sure.
I would think it must be hard trying to make the financials make sense. I mean, probably at some point, right? You guys probably got offered big like festival slots and stuff, right? Like that were fairly big checks. But to really kind of maintain it and live off it, you got to really be out there grinding to really.
I got to tell you, it's so. I haven't said this at all. We were never offered any of that.
Huh, that's really surprising to me.
It is kind of really super surprising because we had no infrastructure. Like,
right.
Like I said, that was like you were saying, it's a bit of it's a moment in time, right? We were, and I've shared this, we were friends with, Ryan before he kind of like was getting in that website. I mean, we were friends with like the Saddle Creek guys when they were first making their first website for Connor. Like, we were lucky to be, we had so many kind of firsts with things that kind of blew up in that period.
Right.
And, and then we had Corey, who was a great friend, and he did all that he could, but it really was out of his garage, and we had no real distribution.
Right. We
were certainly not ready for this and that, and we were never offered to be an opening band for anyone. We were never offered big shows. It was really always way more punk rock than anyone would ever remember now.
Well, I guess I would imagine part of the issue is that the Meadowlands was not an overnight smash or anything. It was kind of a slow burn that people kind of like discovered over, So, did you guys? What was were you already kind of not? Did you tour that record much?
It's I think we played almost every weekend for years. A long time. We had like some long kind of tours. We did more of the punk rock US tours for like Secaucus and all those kind of things. But for the Meadowlands, we would take our vacations. And you're exactly right. So it was in 2003, but it wasn't until 2006 that we then started putting it out in Europe in that kind of vein. So then there was like this whole other sort of, because, it just, you didn't have what you have now where it's like a global hit.
So yeah, I also think there's like now the sort of infrastructure for what like indie rock was not, it was kind of being birthed really. So
at what year do you start recording the follow-up?
I'm not sure. I started doing my demos and scratch in 2007 and real kind of focused attention. And I would say in 2009, 2010, we were recording and talking about how we're going to do it.
And so Charles, 2007 is concurrently laying down demos along with you?
He wasn't. I think he's always, he would always be strumming and doing kind of songs, I'm sure, but not as. I was determined to do better fast.
So are you communicating with each other? Okay, so 2007 comes along and you're like, I'm inspired, I'm doing all these things, and he's not saying anything, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, at the time he was also doing more solo shows and he was kind of playing with other bands and, not many, but just, a couple like, with Ockerville and kind of going and stuff. And he was kind of exploring that sort of like the whole sort of part of music and recording other bands and kind of figure out his way as he was then getting onto, getting married and all that as well. So it was sort of a bit of a transition period. Because the longer the Meadowlands went on, in some ways it got more eerie and weird, right? And we were just like, well, what are we going to do now? And what's next? And how are we going to do this? And
do you guys have like a British sense of difficulty about, or actually a New Jersey sense of difficulty about two dudes hanging out, getting to the bottom of things emotionally?
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
So is that a tough thing?
But there were never like long gaps. I mean, we've always talked to each other. We've tried to talk to each other all the time, right? All through this period, for years, right, up until now, essentially.
So you never sensed any shift in your relationship. It was just really as Aeon Station got underway.
Yeah. No, that's for sure. I think the shift, though, definitely when came over that whole 2010 period, right? Meaning, how are we doing it? Where are we going? Because it really was focused, but it was just taking a lot longer than we expected. But we were trying really hard. I mean, we had finished versions in 2013, right? We were, and then we had finished versions in 2016. Like, we were mastering these things.
Did you have an initial moment where Charles either said something or did something where you were like, oh shit, I think this is going to be, we're going to be mired in some shit here?
I think we've always been so supportive of each other in every way we could, right?
Yeah.
It certainly is no private thing, but I think when Charles posted, on Facebook at one point that his best years were behind him and all this, and he listened to the record and didn't like it to some extent. I would definitely say that we as a band were not happy with that. And why we were not happy with that was really, as we always have done, is in protection of a brother, right? It's sort of like, you can kind of say a lot of shitty things around the kitchen table, but you just don't say it out in the street.
Right.
I think it's the way we always have been. It's like, we don't need to say that because people really like the music, and we don't need to front end it. I've always believed you don't need to lead. Look what we just went through with Peter Gabriel. I mean, people love music and they get it. They don't need to be led. They hate it, frankly. Right. And that's why I also think the Meadowlands was so successful. The Meadowlands was so successful just because we lucked out with a couple key people at the right time, right place, the right record. But it was also nobody gave a shit. Nobody.
Right. You were able to connect with that deep thing because of that.
And people love that outsider like stuff. Like, oh my God, I never ever imagined. Like, people kind of hate follow-ups. It's really kind of, I don't know. I've grown to just despise it over all these years.
Your style of songwriting, there's this kind of hard on sleeve sort of style, a very kind of confessional style of songwriting. Yeah. You're not going to make like a McCartney song about a guy going down and drinking a cup of tea, some random character. It's not really your style. So it kind of feels like listening to the Aeon Station record. We're kind of checking back in on you from where you were at, all those years before in the Meadowlands. It seems like some of these songs kind of have a different kind of perspective. There's kind of I don't know if you call it wisdom or sort of an acceptance of things, maybe more optimism. Would you agree with that?
Well, thank you. I think it's exactly right. I mean, I'm never going to have this experience again where I've written songs in my mid 30s and released it, my early 50s. Mm-hmm. It's never going to happen again. But I do think, where the Meadowlands was sort of like, well, I can't get a job together and I kind of can't keep a girlfriend, in place or keep friends together or whatever. I don't know how to pay rent. I think this record was over the span of, wow, now I'm getting married and I'm having children, mm-hmm. and now I have to kind of, pay a mortgage and, I have to stop pretending I'm going to be somebody else that I'm not. And so I do think the record like that. And then also I do think I wasn't prepared for my 40s. And boy, it can punch you in the face.
Man, is it objectively a puddle of diarrhea?
It is just, guys. I mean, whatever, right? And, and then, I've kind of shared, I've had 2 children and to find out your one child has autism and where that kind of goes. I mean, and I've had issues with, you kind of go through your work changes and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's profound and it gets really heavy. And then I think you kind of, then as you do get older, you're sort of like, screw it, right? Everyone else is kind of in there. And I think I got to a point, and then with COVID and all that kind of stuff, I was like, you know what? It's just nothing's going to change except if I change,
right?
And that was it. And I've struggled, with my son, and I believed, and the heartbreak and this and that. And now I'm like, no, I'm just a different person, right? And I love him more than I could ever imagine, and he's wonderful. We have a great experience, and so is my also son, who's neurotypical. But it's just, and then kind of with the relationship with the band is what people don't realize is, it's a Meadowlands follow-up, but it's been my life. Like, I've never not dreamed about having that record out. As absurd as it might sound, it's actually the truth, right? It's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, you have a really, especially with your fan base, you have kind of a two-way relationship with them. You know, it's you're very empathetic, you know, as a songwriter. Like for me, I'm a fan. You know, I relate to this record a lot because I feel like I'm moving there with you, kind of. You know, like
every few days I call Joe and I say, "Why is Charles taking our album away?"
I think the song "Everything at Once" in particular, that one really kind of encapsulates it for me. It's kind of a choice how you tend to look at things. You know, you can look at things that are, you can choose to remember the things that are more difficult, or you know, you can
exactly. You know, it's 100% right, and thank you, because that's all to my humble ability, right? It had to be good, right? Because we just did a review of somebody who's a master, right? And they're still just, that was pretty shitty. So I still hold like, hey, it's got to be good to whatever I can kind of do. And but really, the honest to God goal was the more transparent I could be. It's so cliche, but it really is. Like maybe somebody will be like, yeah, no, I kind of get what he's talking about, or right, yeah, that's the melody put to this right kind of emotion. So yeah, I thank you. That's like the nicest review.
I've heard the Aeon Station record a number of times, and I'm kind of curious if there is a resentment to, obviously it's going to be in some way, shape, or form be seen in the light of recent events, but I'm wondering if there's a resentment towards Charles for all the years of inactivity in your discography, or is Aeon Station you making peace with that? Or neither? Or am I just looking for a question in what could have been just an organic conversation?
No, I think it's a hard question, to be honest with you, because you know you don't want to live with regret, and I think I would have regretted not putting the record out. So that's for sure. I just sadly did not want to wait anymore. I didn't see the pros of waiting. You know, because you know this shit is not Jenga. You cannot orchestrate it to some sort of perfection landing. You know, it is never going to work out that way. So I wouldn't say resentment. I you know, because I lived each and every year with the belief that it was coming out. When you look at that, that's a different question. Right?
Is he pissed?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, of course, I think we're all pissed. I think we would have to say that each one of us is pissed because, like I said, it's all four that have lived into this dream in whatever way you can, right? I mean, it's just, like I said, you know, we're still in debt. We've always, like, we're that kind of band, right? You know, we still believed. And it was also like a mission to, like, it was a greater mission of what the four could possibly do together. And when you try to separate the four and say, well, you know, someone did X, someone did Y, someone did Z, no one cares. They just don't care because it's not the way they're kind of viewing music or art, right?
Listen, I know people who were in relationships and they were just kind of straggling along. And then one of the two fooled around with somebody outside the relationship. Right. And that woke everybody up. And then they got married, or you know, whatever, they went to the next phase of the relationship. Is that what's going to happen with you guys, you think, or it's too early to tell?
I would certainly say that, you know, I lovingly started the band when I was 18. I've never, like I've just said it over and over again, I would never leave the band. The Wrens has always been my life, and I love it. And I must confess, I'm extra proud of, you know, this Aeon Station record and what it does just for songs and for music in whatever way it'll be accepted. But I do know that what I had done for 14 years wasn't working. Right. So I had to do something there. And then there was sort of like some new stipulations that were put upon an over 30-year relationship that at the moment I just could not accept. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, well, until we can figure out what needs to be accepted, I'm going to enjoy music. And sometimes that relationship broadening, because if you do the same thing over and over again, right, the whole definition stuff is crazy. Right.
Do you have the itch to make another one now that this one's kind of out there and has gotten very nicely received, and it must feel very vindicating? Do you feel like you're gonna maybe do another one of these next year or something?
It's always sort of like been the same way, just always doing music and having and enjoying, right, just to do it. But
you did a lot of this one fairly quickly, right?
You know what's funny is, I mean, Tom Brosier, you know, I also can't highlight enough Jerry McDonald, who is the Wrens drummer.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, he recorded 6 songs actually in like 5 hours.
Well, here's the thing, which is kind of a mind fuck for me. This is the biggest mindfuck, this record for me, is there's no way I could tell you which songs you've been working on for years and years and which song you recorded in an afternoon.
That's the nicest compliment. Because and I would also say that thank you. It's sort of like a fun game, especially with the lyric content and then the whole thing.
But that's very odd. What's the story there? I mean,
I can guess. I would imagine that's probably not the way you write, right? You're not writing like, it's not like you're doing Good Vibrations or something. You kind of write a song, and
right. It's right. I'm not
deeping
direct conveyance of an idea.
And that's sort of also like where the Wrens were going after the Meadowlands. We knew, and Charles and I talked about it for hours. Ages. We could not all of a sudden do, and everyone is tempted by doing their electronic record or whatever, or some sort of jazz free shit, whatever it might have been. But we knew that we could not do that. You kind of can't go sort of off who you are. But anyway, so I think with the with the Aeon Station record, not only was Jerry able to kind of, because he was dying, he was chomping at the bits. You figure he's been a drummer his whole life, went to school for drumming, like he's a drummer's drummer, and he was just dying to get in the studio. He did 6 songs in a couple hours, and it was really Tom Beaujour who kind of had the conversation with me. He's like, we got to make this look right. You can't come in and be, all different. And I think that really kind of helped. That really kind of helped seam the records together, and also, I think it was being older and just like, I'm just going to sing really, really kind of to the bone.
Yeah. So Aeon Station, is this a band, or is it you with the band name swapped out for Kevin Whelan? Is it a long-term plan, or have you not necessarily gotten there yet as far as making that decision?
I don't think I've gotten there, but it's definitely a band in that way of heart, right? With me and Jerry and, of course, my brothers kind of helped out, and Tom, what he did. And anyone that knows me personally is I'm a massive fan of collaborations. Obviously, I've lived in the Wrens my whole life. I just think people do better. Look at you guys. Like, this show is just infinitely better because it's 2 of you. It just helps.
Right.
No matter what you do, and, and there's always complementary parts and all that kind of stuff. So I've never been like these solo guys that like strum guitars and shit. That also drives me insane. So I'm definitely not that person.
So do you think with the quick pace that you're able to work with in the new setup, that there isn't really a sense of lost time for you? Because if you can work that quickly and do it at a high level like that, maybe you don't need to be sitting on that all things must pass kind of
backlog.
Yeah, the backlog. Maybe it's just it just comes to you and comes out fast.
It's I have to tell you, and it really did kind of. It's one of those things. It's like it comes out fast after 17 years or 37 years, right. It's sort of like it is one of those.
But what were you doing in those intervening years? Were you making other songs that are now sitting aside for some other project?
Part of it, I was just waiting and just sort of strumming the guitar like G's and D's and C chords and just sitting around, whatever. So there really wasn't like a focused writing, it wasn't, that's why it's sort of, I'm telling you, I'm just sharing with you guys because you guys are, songwriters into music like this. Those songs, half the record was probably written top to bottom in maybe a couple weeks, and it was recorded in 3 days. Like that, at least a good half of the record for everything. Because when Jerry, I knew that we recorded last December 18th, we went into the studio. A week before that, we barely had forms for the songs. So it was kind of fun. And I think this, and it's which is the weird part. The Wrens have always kind of had that too. Like it's a lot of sloppy playing on these things. We were sort of like, we would take a long time to make a decision, but the first take was fine.
The interesting thing about you guys, now that I think about it, although it never previously struck me, is that the Wrens have a very concerted lyrical focus on missed opportunities and the cruel passage of time. But when you really look at it, or if you really parse your career, a lot of the quote unquote missed opportunities were very conscious decisions that you guys were making as a band.
It's 100,000% right. Because you're the old thing, right what you're good at, and we never made it, and we knew it, which is kind of interesting. Even when we were kind of being appreciated, we never made it, and
whatever it is.
Whatever. Well, what's so funny? We saw it, You know what I mean? Like we saw it with Connor and Bright Eyes. We saw it with the Arcade.
Yeah, a band that I think of as like a model for what you guys could have, like a level you could have gotten to is like a band like The National or something. I could definitely have seen you guys hitting that kind of, level of success.
And you know what's so funny? Charles would laugh, right? Because they were always like my nemesis, The National.
Right.
Because I was just like, how the F did they make it? You know what I mean? But yeah. I get it. I'm not slagging on them. Like I totally get it. Wide his voice and with these long kind of songs, right? But it was just like, but then you kind of get into that phase too. John, I'm sure all these musicians where it's like there are just some that win the lottery ticket, and you kind of can't be jealous of someone who wins a lottery ticket.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And that's the way the game goes.
Well, so you certainly can be jealous of someone who won a lottery ticket.
You can hate them. You can despise them.
But you're not. You're clearly at peace with yourself by the way you carry yourself, even over the phone. But you very much can be, seething in resentment. But the fact of the matter is, when I look at your life from the outside, I don't see somebody who's racked with the kind of like shoulder slump defeat that a lot of the characters in songs are.
I kind of can't believe I'm sharing this, but the reality is I definitely make best work when I'm atomically pissed off. Right. So I would definitely say that in each one of these, in 2013 when I did half of the record, I was atomically masterfully upset and not happy. Right. And then I would say in this second half, I think anger is, I know it seems weird because it doesn't come across that way because we've always been a little, nicey or however you want to say it.
Yeah, and the record's kind of, a lot of parts of it are very pretty.
Yeah, it doesn't come across angry, but it's definitely made with an angry spirit, for sure. Right. Hopeful, but still, right, I heard a great quote lately, which I kind of like, that not everything good started off with someone being pissed off.
Yeah.
And you kind of look at everything, it's just like, yeah, that probably somebody was upset and they went and did something, and yeah.
The Wrens, they were or are, I guess we'll find that out, right? A unique band that left something unique behind, or continues to leave something unique behind. What do you think is the band's true legacy? I mean, who are you singing for and to?
Oh wow, what a great question. I think that we were singing to everyone that loves a mission of art and artistic expression, and found that it had to be part of their life and not all of their life. So I really do think it really is. They really are the New Jersey blue collar kind of band. That's who we were. Humble beginnings. We achieved humble heights, and still had a good time doing it.
You achieved more than humble heights. I mean, you had with the Meadowlands, you had a long streak there where you were able to milk from that.
And it's pretty rare that a record like that, even all these many years later, people still really care. There's, you can see it in social media. You can see it if you follow of any music blogs. There are people who are really still like, that the record has real staying power.
Yep.
That's rare. So that's kind of the best kind of achievement, really.
Like I said, you live it, music and you love it. It's like it's a long road to get here. So it's really, really nice. And I truly. It is great to share it with people who are just really cool. So it's very, very lucky.
Well, thank you so much for that. That means a lot coming from you.
Yeah, it's been super nice talking to you.
Thanks
so much for coming.
Thank you for taking all the time away from your families and your life to do this. I mean, really, thank you so much.
You are the immaculate sweetheart. Please listen. If and when you come through this way on a tour and you need anything whatsoever, you could please be in touch and let us know. We're there. Okay.
Thank you. We'll do it. Take you up on that.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
All right, thanks a lot, Kevin.
All right, Kevin, we'll be in touch soon.
All right, take care, man.
Bye-bye now.
All right, bye.